Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Our good friend, our recurring guest from Tennis Channel, Gill Gross. Gill, welcome back to the channel. Always a pleasure having you on, talking about tennis and talking in a way that's very open for discussion in a lot of ways. So, Gill, welcome back to the channel.
Good to get the Gill and Phil show back on the road. Always a pleasure.
Yes, that is the new segment, the Gill and Phil show for this segment, and
Yes.
I'm very excited about that. But jumping into it, I brought Gil on today to talk about the ATP and what's going on so far. And I think the first thing we have to talk about is the Olympics. And I think the first thing I texted you too for the Olympics was, are people actually taking these results like lightly, or are they, because a lot of people skip the Olympics. I think the biggest example right now that I recently saw was Manarino skipping it, and his home country bounces out of the first round in the last three events in the US: Newport, Atlanta, and now DC he lost. So how big an event besides just the pedigree of the Olympics is this to tennis players?
Yeah, it just the crazy thing is there are going to be some players whose careers are literally defined, or line one of their career is going to be something that they did at the Olympics. And there are
Hmm.
going to be other players who maybe didn't even go that deep at the Olympics or whatever, but they'll go around and tell their grandkids or tell the random person at the bar 20 years from now, yeah, I played in the Olympics. Probably before they say, I played Indian Wells. They'll say I played the
Yes.
Olympics because everybody knows what that means. But at the same time, you're right. There are some people who don't even feel like it's worth the trip for them. And you'll ask 10 different people, you'll hear 10 different answers. For Adrian Manarino, I think we can pretty much discern what the answer is.
Yeah.
First of all, he's struggling and trying to get things going, but
Yes.
it's clay. It's clay.
It's
So if you're going to ask Adrian Manarino, would you like to extend your clay court season? He's going to press the no button every single time, apparently, even if it's at his home Olympics. Now, I am
yeah.
slightly surprised, being a Frenchman, that he wouldn't maybe just want that experience, but undoubtedly, the
Yeah.
best thing for his tennis would have been the decision that he made, even if it didn't
Hmm.
work out and he continued to take some difficult defeats. So it's such a case by case basis. For me, as an analyst
Hmm.
or as a journalist, I I don't consider the Olympics any more important than, I don't know, a Masters 1000 tournament. But I think from a interpersonal standpoint, as far as putting myself in the shoes of a player,
Yeah.
I don't think I would ever skip the Olympics. I would want that experience. To me, it's, even if I felt like in over the course of the next 3 months in my tennis career, the better thing for me would be to not play the Olympics, which I think for many players, that's the case. If you can play the North American hardcourt swing, you can go early to Washington, D.C. and to Atlanta. You're earning rankings points. You're earning more prize money. You're going to hit the ground running when you go to Canada, as opposed to those players who are coming back off the clay, tired, travel across to North America from a different continent. Like, career wise, it's an advantage not to play,
Yeah.
but to me, short term sacrifice in the career
Hmm.
versus lifetime experience of being an Olympian is probably where I would land, I think, trying to put myself in their shoes.
And I think that's the biggest, when you look at different players and you look at players' ages, like Ben Shelton, I understand why he would skip. He's got so much left of his career that he can play, and he has the opportunity to play it on a surface that's much better suited for his serve and his forehand. You have guys, even with Andy Murray too, like he's not going to have another opportunity after this Olympics to play in another one to kind of repeat that success that he's had. So just for him to have that environment to play with Dan Evans, Rafa, and Carlos, like Carlos is going to be able to do this for the next couple of years, but to honestly, the main reason he probably played the Olympics was to play doubles with Rafa, and honestly, that's probably why he played doubles as well. I think if Rafa wasn't playing doubles, I don't think Carlos would have played doubles. But
Yeah, I think that's
because
possible, but also perhaps
go ahead.
perhaps he would have just played the singles, still
Mhm.
played the Olympics, knowing I do have a chance for gold here.
Yeah. Especially
And
on
you
the
know, it's a
surface that he's there for.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, so it's a different mindset where if you're a Francis Tiafoe, you don't believe you can medal.
Mhm.
So am I going to play knowing that I can't medal, or am I going to try to win in my hometown, Washington, D.C.,
Yeah.
which if Francis hasn't been able to do yet. I hope he's able to do that at some point in his career. I think it's one of his main goals, to be completely honest. So we'll
Yeah.
see if he can get that done. But yeah, it's such a personal thing. Also, like, there's a difference in how much pride individuals take in representing their country. Like, let's not act like everybody is equally as patriotic or equally as prideful when it comes to
Yeah.
representing their country, right? There are levels to that.
Yeah. And if we take that same mindset and we look at Dan Evans too, the man who won Washington last year but decided to skip it and go to the Olympics and play doubles with Andy Murray. What did I see yesterday? It was like the guy's dropping a
To
hundred
like 170.
exact. He's dropping over 100 spots in the rankings to play the Olympics. So to say people may not care about the Olympics in tennis because it's not prize points or prize money, like that's the perfect example of it. Dan Evans would rather play doubles with Andy Murray and compete and have that feeling than defending a title, especially the biggest
Yeah,
title of his career, I believe, right?
for sure.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest part of it too. And I think going along with the Olympics too, were you surprised by how bad Rafa lost to Novak?
Yeah, I was. I
Because
didn't think, I actually thought Rafa, I thought maybe he'd take a set. I ended up predicting him to take a set,
mhm,
which, I think always when it comes to making predictions, I err toward the side of respect. I'm normally
mhm.
not going to say, yeah, I think it's gonna be a blowout.
Well,
Then
no one's
you
ever
look
going to
really
say that. No, I feel like
well. I've
in
said it.
this
I've said it before.
okay, fair. I think
Like, th-
it's the pet it's the 60th minute meeting, excuse me. 60th
yeah,
meeting. It's on clay court. I think if this was any other surface, I would have given it to Novak hands down. But like,
yes,
I like how you put it. You have to like, put the respect on the name that it deserves. Rafa in Paris on clay, basically a home crowd favorite.
best. Yep, home.
Bet
He's got the crowd. Tons of
best
pressure on Djokovic.
best of three too. So it's not like his whole body really needed to like dig deep for it. But after Novak, what was it, 6-1 in the first, 6-1, 6-4?
Yeah,
I saw the score line and I'm like, I don't know how to react to this. And I hate asking the question because it's such a big and general question with like, does this stain his like reputation in the Olympics? Like, no, because for me, this was his last one. We all kind of figured it at this point, but we're just surprised by the numerical result that followed it.
yeah. Look, I think when you look back at this,
Please subscribe. Thanks.
when the history books look back at this, not that there are tennis, well, I guess there are some tennis history books, but
There are.
when we're looking at tennis abstract in 20 years, uh, this result will be a pretty accurate representation of where Djokovic and Nadal are in their respective careers.
Mhm.
And yeah, they're only 1 year separated in age. Nadal's 38, Djokovic is 37. But
Wild.
look, it's the same thing when it comes to human aging, right?
Yeah.
You can look at one 85-year-old who's vibrant and sharp and is communicating well and maybe is still active. And then another 85-year-old, they've declined in a much larger way, right? So we see this with not just the elderly, but
Yeah.
also with athletes, where it's not just about the number. And I
Yeah.
think what's been very clear in the last couple of years, and the line for Nadal was Wimbledon 2022. Remember, he beat Taylor Fritz in the quarterfinal. Then he had to pull out of his semifinal with Kyrgios because he hurt his ab. He
Yeah.
injured
Tore it.
injured his ab. He tore it. Yeah. He hasn't been the same since then
Yeah.
at any point. And he hasn't been able to stay healthy for super extended periods of time since then.
Yeah.
Djokovic since then has won 3 majors, 2 year-end championships. He's declined a little bit this year
Because of his
but
knee, though. That's not
well,
because of,
maybe because of a lot of things, right? I mean,
yeah.
the loss at the Australian Open to Yonex Sinner wasn't because of his knee. It was a very kind of one-sided defeat. I think there have been a
That's
lot of
true.
issues this year, but
Yeah.
but the point is a decline for Djokovic. It's still he's making quarterfinals in 90% of the tournaments that he plays. He's in
Hmm.
2 major semifinals.
Yeah.
Nadal's decline has looked completely different. He
Yeah.
hasn't been in a big major quarterfinal since Wimbledon
Yeah.
2022. So you look at the scoreline, and I thought it was going to be closer because the conditions were so Rafa favorable, as
Yeah.
we discussed.
Yeah.
But that wasn't enough to really change the fact that there's a big gap between the two right now in terms of how much they've declined.
It's just kind of it's weird to see in that mindset too when you look at Rafa in his decline versus like we saw it with Federer too. We kind of knew the last line of when we kind of had that sense of when he was starting to make his mark of this is my last year and these are my last few months. And Rafa, it's just different because that's not, I guess that's not how we picture him as a player. We don't see him kind of being passive or rolling over on his stomach, but with score lines like that against someone like Novak, it changes the way you perceive like, okay, this is it. Like this is kind of the first stop of the last the first of the last stop for him.
Yeah, well, I don't think Federer never really started losing. I mean, his one moment was the third set in the Wimbledon quarterfinal against Hubert Hurkacz, where
Mhm.
he lost at 6-love. That ended up being his last professional match on tour. But that was he came back clay season of that year after having knee surgery. Before the knee surgery, he had lost to Djokovic in the Australian Open semifinal,
Mhm.
and then he said, my knees hurt. I need to kind of take an injury layoff." So
Is
if
that
you
when he played
actually
in
look at
Switzerland and he lost second? When did he lose? He lost second round of Switzerland. I know he played a tournament on
in
clay.
Basel,
Was it Basel?
oh,
Because he
Geneva.
Geneva. He played that and then lost.
Well,
And that
I know at Roland Garros, remember he withdrew. He didn't
yes,
even lose at Roland Garros. He withdrew. Um,
I think it was
yeah, I mean,
Geneva. It's
I think you're right that he played Geneva, but I'm a little bit fuzzy on all the details. But basically, like if you look at, let's say, his last 3 major events that he played in his career, it was
yeah.
a semifinal,
Yep.
um, a withdrawal where he didn't even lose. He just
Yeah.
said, "I'm done," and then a Wimbledon quarterfinal.
Yeah.
So we never got the era of Federer where it's like, oh, he's losing first round, he's losing second round, he can't
Mhm.
get out of the first week. That never occurred. So he was already done because the knee really screamed at him at that point and said no more.
Yeah.
So Nadal, I think we're getting what's more typical, an era in which he's probably like maybe the 30th best player in the world or something along those lines right now. It's
Yeah.
hard to say because we don't have a big sample size of him
Yeah.
playing. If he played the full year, we could see where he ends up in the rankings, and that would tell us. We don't really have that, but I don't know. Does that sound right to you? Like 30th in the world?
I honestly wouldn't even put him that high. Like some of the stuff that he was hitting to today, and it's funny because I was
In the
talking to my
doubles?
in the doubles like today, like watching him for me, it like I talked to my coworkers about playing doubles, and I knew because my coworker's Spanish, I knew that going into a match with Rom and Austin, they would definitely have a disadvantage. The only way Rafa and Carlos were going to beat them was sheer power. But in terms of double strategy, they didn't have it. So I kind of had a feeling they would lose. But I would say top 50. I wouldn't even say top 30
He
for
did just make
Rafa.
a he did just make a 250 final. I mean, it's for Rafa. For Rafa, the bar is the roof, and that's nothing. But
Yeah.
for most players, just making a final tour level means
Of
you're actually,
250. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, not just anyone makes tour level finals.
Yes, I agree. But if him losing an opening set and having to come back multiple times is not the
I
same.
agree.
It's not the same dominant performance that you would have in a guy that would win 7-6 6-4 or a like 6-3 6. I don't think Rafa that time in was it Gestad had a
Bostad, Sweden.
Bastad. Sorry, excuse me to the Swedish followers. He never had a straightforward victory, and I think that to me said a lot more about how he was
Agreed.
performing rather than him making the final of a 250 event.
That's been the problem all year.
Yeah,
He needs to, especially because they're physical, like his body has a clock, his body has a limit,
yeah,
and he's getting into these battles with guys who he should really crush. I mean, I
it's a
thought
timer.
The
Yeah,
Martin Fucsovics match in the first round, I thought was trouble when I
yeah,
watched that because it's like, look, I think Fucsovics is a great player,
he is.
but his backhand is his weakness. You're playing Nadal on clay, you're a righty, and you have a weak backhand. And Fucsovics, we all know he's like one of the fittest guys out there. He's a fitness monster. His fitness doesn't look right to me right now. I actually don't think he's in great shape at the moment. I think I don't know if it's age. He's 32. I don't know if it's because he's had some injuries recently, but to me, it doesn't even look that good. So you're looking at kind of a weak righty backhand on clay
Mhm.
against Nadal,
Yeah,
who doesn't really have great fitness. Like that shouldn't be a close match.
like
Who's
I
six
don't
four
think
and
in the second too. Like I didn't think Fucsovics was even gonna win a set. Like that to me, as soon as
yeah.
Rafa won the first set, and then all of a sudden I see him turned around to lose in the second. That's when I knew that there was something that he kind of with Federer, right? Like he couldn't afford to go the distance when he started that. Like he couldn't afford to. Federer couldn't play his best tennis in a fifth set towards the later stages of his career. But
Yeah.
Rafa going three for Rafa should be nothing. But going three with the guy from Hungary is not the best news you want to hear as a Rafa fan or for Rafa for his body. Kind of putting that time limit on like how much 100% can I play throughout this match and how long can I hold it for?
He had to come back quickly the next day and play Novak. And
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, yeah. So he hasn't now, but to defend the whole like maybe 30th best in the world thing, he's beaten Alex de Minaur, he's beaten
Hmm.
Cam Norrie, he's beaten
Hmm.
Mariano Navone.
Yeah.
He has some wins. He played well against Zverev at Roland Garros.
Hmm.
It was really his nerves, which by the way, Phil, I think has been one of his main problems
You
outside of
think?
the physicality. I think the nerves have been an issue for Nadal. But
You
I
think
thought like
mentally he's just not the same?
no, not even close. And I know that can seem strange. I saw the same thing with Murray though.
Yeah.
When these guys have more like disruptions in their schedules and they take some more tough losses and they feel they put a lot of pressure on themselves for whatever reason, or they feel like the clock is winding down. They don't have that many opportunities. If you're an Nadal, you're thinking, you know, I don't know, this is my last Olympics, whatever.
Yeah. It's
Um,
the mindset that you're going into it knowing that there's a lot more in the back of his mind than the match.
there's a lack of confidence, I think. And that is another thing and maybe there's a lack of reps as well over the years.
Yeah.
He's lost reps. He hasn't had a lot of like psyche boosting results. So yeah, I feel that there have been flashes where Nadal looks great
Hmm.
and but under pressure, high pressurized situations, and at the start of a lot of these matches when he's just tight and the depth is suffering and he can no longer make up for bad depth with his speed, which he did for his entire career. He would drop the ball short and get away with it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he would always drop the ball short, but when he did, he could get away with it. And
Exactly.
that's gone now. His serve doesn't help him.
No.
You know, that's hard for a guy who isn't all that physical anymore when you're not getting free points with your serve. So I mean, now at this point we've dissected it pretty comprehensively, but there are issues in for Rafa. So
Yeah,
now the question is, does he want to play just to play, which is fine if he does, but I'm not sure what the answer to that is, because he can't believe, I don't think at this point, he can't believe that there are big titles in his future.
it's kind of the same way with Murray of like, I'm just playing to play to see how far I can take my body and see how far I can go with my success. And Murray's kind of reached that limit. I don't think Rafa's realized that, but I think after this tournament, he has realized like, okay, I'm hitting it, but how long do I really want to go for? Because he's scheduled to play Laver Cup at the end of this year, correct?
He is, I think.
He is
It's a
in the
little
pro.
fuzzy.
It's, I think he's in the promo because they just did their 50 days countdown today.
Okay.
So he is
Okay.
scheduled to do that, but will he play? Who knows? And I know your time is precious, Gill, and I really appreciate you joining us. So I just wanted to cover a couple more topics.
No
Um,
worries.
Alcaraz, you talked about it on one of your podcasts lately. I think it was right after Wimbledon, talking about Sinner and Alcaraz and how Alcaraz has talked about Sinner still being the best player in the world. At which point does that mindset switch from Alcaraz thinking Sinner's still better to Alcaraz thinking he is better than Alcaraz is better than
Then Sinner.
Sinner? Thank you. Is there a moment where he'll say that he thinks he's the best player
That
in the
he's the
world?
man.
Yeah,
Mm, I don't think he's. I think he does believe he's the best in the world when he's on court playing the match.
yeah,
You know, and I think he's coming from um, the Nadal line of thinking, um, where, I mean, look, he likes Yannick a lot. Like they have, I think,
they have a
if
great.
not a if not a friendship, then a
I,
huge mutual respect. And I think they enjoy, as a result of that, they're just going to throw each other as many compliments as possible. And that's the way they're going to kind of go about things.
mhm.
But I think Alcaraz probably looks at it as, okay, the head to head between us is what it is.
Yeah,
Although Alcaraz won the latest one at Roland Garros, and the latest one is always the most important one.
yeah,
But of course, Alcaraz feels, okay, I've won 4 majors and Yannick has won one.
yeah. So he has that. So yeah,
That's what it's about, right?
yeah. That's what
It's
it comes down
hard to
to.
get past. It's hard to get past that.
Mhm. It's hard to get past the fact that he does have more titles. The head to head is what it is, and it just becomes one of those where it. I hate to make this comparison again, but it is that Federer Rafa relationship. They knew, like coming into this era, that they knew that they were coming up and they could be the best. But it's just that mutual respect that takes them farther in their quote unquote rivalry to being the best two players in the world. But whether or not Yannick will catch up to him, that's a larger question that needs to be answered later on in time, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. And the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is with Novak. Novak's embraced his villain era, right? Like at this point, like he's kind of embraced the idea that he's he doesn't care what people think at this point.
I'd put it a little differently.
How would you put it?
He, I don't know if it's embracing villain, but I think it's, I'm done. I'm done taking the negativity without dishing it back. Like I'm done a punching bag with it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he ever was fully,
He
but I
tried
think
hiding
now,
it by like doing all his antics.
I
with
think
it. And
sometimes he just took the high road. Like at Wimbledon in 2019, it's the most famous example of Novak battling a hostile crowd.
yeah,
And he actually went full almost robot mode where he
yeah,
he barely celebrated after he won. He basically said, if you're going to give me negativity, which really was positivity towards his opponent more than
yes,
anything. But if you're not going to give me positivity, I'm going to give you nothing. And I now think he's no longer saying, I'm going to give you nothing. He's adjusted to, I'm actually going to go right back at you. I am
yeah.
going to turn this into like,
We're
I'm
gonna
going to
turn around.
actually, yeah, I'm actually going to address you
Mhm.
personally in the crowd, you cheering against me. And when I hit a forehand winner, I'm going to look your way and I'm going to go, "Ooh, do you see that? You see that forehand winner? That's the
Yeah,
difference."
and I think too, it's it doesn't make you like him more, but it gives you like it's you have to give him more respect for finally changing that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a personal preference thing,
Yeah,
like it always is, but there are going to be some people who are like, "Heck yeah, like this guy's I like this fiery guy who's really defiant and the Djokovic is, I'd say his main like ethos has always been like underdog ethos,
yeah,
even though now
he's not.
he, he technically isn't at all, but
I,
just by nature of coming after Nadal Djokovic, sorry, after Nadal Federer, and the thought being two greatest players of all time, those two,
yeah,
like the Djokovic guy is not catching up. Sorry, and I think at a certain point, everybody came to the realization, like, no, the Djokovic guy is catching up. Um, but I
he's
think
here.
because his career started out as underdog. I
Mhm.
think he kept that. And I think the fan base and almost like the general vibe of Djokovic fandom and Djokovic's career is a little bit of Novak fighting against the world, Novak against everybody else.
Yeah,
And I think it's coming out in a little bit more of like a just kind of real and honest way. And I think
yeah,
most people who have been with Novak the whole time will love that. They will be happy that it's kind of trended that direction.
mhm.
Then there are going to be some people who just don't like the hostility, and they're going to be much more attracted to more conventional class and
Yeah.
stoicism,
Good,
maybe even or
nice word,
pleasantness,
nice
right?
word.
Or like overall pleasantness. Like
Yeah,
I'm never gonna be hostile towards anyone or anything, and we're all gonna get along, and it's gonna be kumbaya,
yeah,
which is
the
not really the
best.
way it goes with Novak.
Never does. But Gil, thank you. So I appreciate you joining us today. I know you have to go, but Gil, thank you again. The Phil and Gil show is wrapping up as of right now. Make sure to check out his, I believe, The Draw,
Yeah,
your
the draw.
newsletter.
That's the newsletter. Yep, I
Yeah,
appreciate the plug on that one.
of course.
Uh, the draw dot tennis.
The draw.tennis. Definitely look into that. Definitely subscribe to that if you are new to his channel, to his person. It's definitely worth a read. It has all your up-to-date stuff and Gil's amazing analysis. So make sure to check that out. If you are not subscribed to the Tweener Tennis channel, make sure you are subscribed. We're trying to hit no, not even six. We're trying to hit 5,000 subs by the end of the year. So would love to have you guys join us. Make sure the notifications are turned on, and I will see you in the next one. Gil, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you, man. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Have fun tonight.